Let's start. So we are now looking at statement 3 of chapter 7. Again, just a reminder to everyone. And as I have been reading, this chapter, different statements, a lot of what's in this chapter, it's a little bit harder, I think, for us to completely grasp, or not forget about completely, even to generally grasp is a little bit hard, in part because it's talking about the Buddha state. So keep that in mind. Yeah? And don't be so surprised if you read and we go over it and still it's just like, if it's like, it's okay. It just means, we are not there yet, but one of these days we will get there. So statement 3, it says, Gnosis, or primordial wisdom, is completely beyond illusory phenomena. Now, of course, this statement, without context, without commentary, you might think, well, of course, of course, primordial wisdom, by definition, is completely beyond illusory phenomena, right? It makes sense, and then you feel like, why even need to say this statement? But this statement is said in response to. This statement is said in relation to, before even looking at the statement, the counter statement provided in this translation. Basically, this statement is said in response to people who, again, they are not like making this up, but a certain reading of some of the sutras and the commentaries, especially sutras of the perfection of wisdom type, sutras that predominantly use the language of negation, not this, not that, like the Heart Sutra, right? And commentarial traditions that expand on that, such as Nagarjuna and his successors. They tend to use negative language. They tend to use methods to, you could say, short circuit our dualistic way of thinking. To interrupt our dualistic way of thinking, they use language that sometimes you will find statements like, even Buddha is an illusion. And therefore, primordial wisdom is also an illusion. It's not that Gilbert Rinpoche doesn't agree that there are times and occasions where it is helpful and necessary to remember that even Buddha is an illusion. Even primordial wisdom is an illusion. And it's useful to be reminded that, as in a reminder that our concepts of Buddha, our concepts of primordial wisdom, they are illusory. So then, following that, what it is saying then is, it is not that the state of Buddha, the actual state of Buddha, the actual state of primordial wisdom is an illusion. but rather any and all concepts that we have now with regards to that. Yeah? Any and all concepts that we have now with regards to primordial wisdom, with regards to the Buddha state, they are illusory. Until and unless we directly achieve this primordial wisdom, achieve this Buddha state, it's illusory. It's concept, it's conceptual. So what Kyopa Rinpoche wants to say here is that, but as for the actual state of Buddha, that is not illusory, as in not real, as in not true. So here I think he is correcting the danger of excessive negation. Until even Buddhas who are completely free from confusion gets negated by over-negating. So here, now we look at the counter statement provided here. People claim that even if there were a phenomenon more supreme than nirvana, since it would be like an illusion, it would still be illusory. So there are some people who say, in other words, people who say, go take too literally what the Prajnaparamita, the perfection of wisdom, and Nagarjuna's writings that says, Nirvana is an illusion because samsara is an illusion. And then the state of Buddha, which in some contexts is said to be beyond nirvana, meaning beyond the nirvana as understood by the Shravakas. Sometimes in Mahayana texts, they say the Shravakas' understanding of nirvana is partial. It's partial in that it's a state of cessation without like an active principle. So in some Mahayana texts, it will say that, but the real nirvana of the Buddha is beyond that kind of state of cessation, meaning all afflictions have ceased. Then nothing else you can say about it. Yeah, but here this counter statement say, even that of the Buddha, which is beyond the partial nirvana of Shravakas, even the Buddha's nirvana is also an illusion. And this is when Kyopa's statement says, no, you cannot keep extending this. Illusion, 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 illusion. It stops somewhere. It stops when one is Buddha. Illusion is finished. So how can the Buddha state be illusory? What is illusory is our concepts of the Buddha state. That's illusory. But as for the Buddha state itself, as for primordial wisdom itself, that is not illusory. Yeah, so we look at Chodrat's commentary, which is short, The exalted one is the Buddha, within the essence that is free from all extremes of proliferation. Based on that, the vital point, which here is the primordial wisdom, is called an illusion that appears despite its non-existence. Being a delusion within delusion of uncertain appearance, it will cease to exist at this very moment, and is thus impermanent. Now, this is presenting what other people say. So what other people say is that the primordial wisdom of Buddhas only appear to be so because beings are deluded, and from their state of delusion, they look over there and they see primordial wisdom. Then, in that way, primordial wisdom appears. So they're saying that the Buddha's primordial wisdoms are only present as a counterpoint to sentient beings' confusion. But here, Kyopa says, and then Chodra elaborates, however, the gnosis that is in truth beyond the sphere of the proliferating mind and its profound luminous Mahamudra is such that it is beyond such spheres and has severed the roots of illusion. It is the fearless permanent emptiness possessing the supreme of all aspects, which is great primordial wisdom. Therefore, this primordial wisdom is one that one cannot fathom through all the similes, such as like an illusion, like a mirage, like a phantom. So such similes, such expression cannot be taken literally. Questions, comments here at this point? Make sense so far? Yeah, so the gist is do not overextend, right? The notion that Buddha's nirvana, primordial wisdom are illusory. Yes, insofar as our concepts about these things are at this point in our progress, yes, we need to understand it's illusory. But as for actual Buddhahood, actual primordial wisdom, that by definition, those are beyond illusion. Those don't have faults of the illusion. Don't have faults of delusion and don't have faults of illusion. Now, interestingly, here in the notes, it says, Doja Sherab mentions Jitsun Dambagar as the one who held the view refuted here. Meaning even within Kyoba Rinpoche's like disciples, yeah, and a very important disciple, Gadampa Chudingpa, he seems to have held this view, this refuted view. And then Doja Sherab points out, he says, that this view is present. It's not like it's like wrong view as in like, very negative wrong view per se, because this view is in fact based on certain readings, certain way of interpreting the Prajnaparamita Sutras, the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. Such as, for example, there's this quote, Nirvana to be like an illusion, like a dream. The completely perfected Buddha too is like an illusion, like a dream. Even if there were one phenomenon exceeding nirvana, it would be illusory, it would be like a dream. Even the completely perfected Buddha is illusory, like a dream. Yeah, but here again, Kyopa says, and even, you can quote from Pamodrupa that says, having gathered the illusion-like accumulations, one obtains the three illusion-like kayas, bodies of Buddhas. And finally, accumulations have been completed. And even Jigdan Sungun, you can quote from him that says, brings beings to maturation through illusory body, speech, and mind. Meaning Buddhas bring beings to full maturation through illusory body, speech, and mind. Now, even given all these quotes, Jigten Sumgun maintains that primordial wisdom is completely beyond illusory phenomena. The basic argument is that mastery of all phenomena as illusion and the non-existence of even that illusion cannot be fathomed by the proliferating mind, since this realization is a sphere beyond mind. It is sometimes taught as, quote, illusion-like, since Buddha, being skilled in means, teaches it in a manner that accords with the constitutions, faculties, and mental levels of samsaric beings. In other words, the basic argument here is that the mastery of all phenomena, the realization that all phenomena is illusory, and that this illusion ultimately don't exist. This is something that while our current mind with elaborations, mind with proliferation, subject-object mind, confused mind, right? Right now this mind cannot fathom. But when all of these are purified, cleared away, then what is realized then, we call Buddha wisdom, we call primordial wisdom, we call the Buddha state, that you cannot say that they don't exist. You cannot say that they are ultimately don't exist and ultimately illusory. So this is, again, in other words, Kyoba Rinpoche pulling us back from the dangers of nihilism. Like Nagarjuna wrongly applied. Nagarjuna extended too far. Uh, 7.4. So the last three statements you can say, in a way, they were probably uttered by Kyoba Rinpoche when some of his disciples who have studied too much emptiness, studied a lot on emptiness and theorizing emptiness and debating emptiness and, quoting texts on emptiness, have gone too far. Until even the state of Buddha is completely negated. The state of Buddha is to be properly negated, of course. Properly negated means, if we think, or not if we think, but all our concepts of Buddha, those should be negated, as in negated, not like, push it under the rug, negate it, but rather we should see the limitations of all our temporary views, all our limited views. Just like the analogy of 10 blind men, right? They're brought up to an elephant and they've never seen an elephant before, and they're blind, right? So then they just touch the elephant, right? That story we all have heard, right? So one will say, oh, I know what an elephant is. An elephant is like a tree, a big tree, because it's held the elephant's leg. Oh, I know what an elephant is. An elephant is like a fan, because it's holding the ear, right? All those are to be negated, meaning to show that they are only partially true. And therefore, the idea that an elephant is like a tree is delusion, is illusory. The idea that an elephant is like a long, fat snake because somebody held the trunk is an illusion, is a delusion. But the elephant itself is not an illusion in this analogy. as in there is Buddha state. There is primordial wisdom. The next couple of statements, I believe, I'm not very educated in these more like detailed debates that are going on in the scholastic circles of Tibetan Buddhism. But I believe the next couple of statements is now addressing the excesses, right? The overextension of those who study logic, which is another area of studies within the great Buddhist topics for scholars. There's the topic of emptiness, the analysis of emptiness. Then there's the study of logic. And the study of logic related to the study of like Abhidharma analysis of mind. And applying reasoning to go through all the fine details of the Abhidharma's understanding of mind and how it works, and confused mind and Buddha mind, and then what happens with Buddha mind, all of that. So to some degree, if we have a hard time understanding these statements or appreciating like their meaning, it is also partly, because we are not educated in the ins and outs of the scholastic debates that were going on in Tibetan Buddhism, continuing from Indian Buddhism, and in some ways continuing to today among the scholastic circles. So someone who is schooled in these scholastic matters perhaps can read these statements and go, oh, wow. Because given the scholastic debates. So we don't understand some of these statements that well or appreciate them that well, not only because we are so far from being Buddhas, also because we lack the scholastic background. So my memory of these things which I've studied before, it's kind of fading. So I cannot bring out, the flavors that are in these statements for you. Got to find someone else. 7.4. So there, it now has to do with scholastic debates around issues of how the mind works, how Buddha mind works. So here, Tyopa's statement is, the Buddhas continuously dwells in valid cognition. Okay, so valid cognition, some technical term. So this is about an analysis of what types of knowing, what types of cognizing are valid and what types are invalid. So in the scholastic tradition, in Nalanda and even beyond Nalanda or before Nalanda, but Nalanda is like the full fruition, which Tibetan Buddhism considers like the highest development of Buddhist sciences, Buddhist logic, Buddhist debate. It all happened at Nalanda. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama constantly talks about the great Nalanda tradition. So in Nalanda tradition, especially, but definitely didn't start there. Nalanda is just the highest development of that. It's generally being accepted that there are 5 ways of knowing, of cognizing, of which 3 are considered mistaken, and 2 are valid. So these 5, right? The 2 is direct valid cognition and valid inference. The other 3 are doubt, as in having questions, assumption, like just assuming without good reason. And the third is false cognition. So 2 types are valid, 5 types actually are invalid. You can see this list on page 640 or footnote 1389. Direct valid cognition and valid inference are valid minds. Then 5 others. Doubt meaning like having, unsure, shaky, shaky this way, shaky that way, that is invalid. Assumption, just making assumptions. So there's a difference between assumption and inference, with the implication that assumptions are kind of based on emotions. You can say, I have a gut feeling, but not based on inference. Inference would be, if you see smoke, the most famous example, if you see smoke, you know for sure there's fire. If you don't see smoke, for example, you cannot say, I know for sure there's no fire. Yeah, so that's inference. Inference is when you see smoke, you can say definitely somewhere there's fire. Assumption is not based on good reasoning, just based on your feeling. You're feeling angry, you make some assumptions. You're feeling sad, you make some assumptions. You're feeling happy, you make some assumptions. You're feeling lusty, you make some assumptions. Yeah. Then false cognition, which means you see a rope and then you think, oh, it's a snake. That's just false cognition. Subsequent consciousness and undetermined appearances. These 2, I'll leave it for you to research because I already returned to my teachers. I don't know how to explain to you these 2. In any case, these are like examples, right? You can see in this system, in this logic system, they have identified 7 types of possible ways that most of us know things. 5 are said to be with faults. 2 are said to be faultless. So valid cognition, direct valid cognition is what Buddhas have. For us right now, at best, right, we can use valid inference. Valid inference. And so here it shows the Buddhist appreciation and emphasis on reasoning. So again, as much as Kyopa Rinpoche warned us against, right, becoming addicted to our thoughts, our thinking, nonetheless, overall, the Buddhist tradition does appreciate clear thinking, reasoned thinking, rather than emotional responses. But anyway, this valid cognition, it says here, Buddhas dwell continuously in a state of valid cognition. And this is said in response to what? In response to people who claim that the mind of the Buddha is, from the second moment onward, not a valid cognition. What is this second moment onward? It means something along the lines of, in the moment that the Buddha became Buddha, that moment is valid cognition. In the next moment, it is not valid cognition. Now, it is not saying that Buddhas now become deluded. In fact, what it's saying, as far as I can understand, what it is saying is, like this other point, is that there are no thoughts at all occurring. for Buddhists. So they say, Buddhists have no thoughts. All thoughts are gone. So even this idea of valid cognition is gone. Why do they say that? Well, in part, there's a long history, I would say, of ideas developing, and if logically this is how it is, then this must be how it is, and if given this, then this, given this and this, then the people who study this then come to the conclusion, therefore, to even say Buddhas have valid cognition is wrong. Okay, so here, let's look at the commentary. Since Buddha, the Exalted One, has perfected the primordial wisdom that knows how things are and how they are in their various cases, he continuously dwells in valid cognition. And so here is the Kyopa's point. Yeah? Because we say by definition, Buddhas know the way things are and the way things are coming into existence, right? The first Vajra statement. The nature of things and the nature of their appearance. So if Buddhas by definition is someone who sees that, then by definition at all times they see this. Moreover, this is so because, except for remaining only in valid cognition, the Buddha never has a non-analytical indifference caused by his possession of the three perfect qualities of Buddhahood for his own sake, which is being unconditioned, spontaneously present, and not realized through external causes. And so this is some of the details about what are the three perfect qualities of Buddhahood. There are qualities of Buddhahood that is said to have implications on how Buddhas benefit beings. And then there are qualities of Buddhahood that is related to how it benefits the individual that has achieved Buddha. So here is talking about qualities that are beneficial to the individual who has achieved the state of Buddha. And there is these three qualities, which is they have achieved the unconditioned, and this unconditioned state is spontaneously present, and its realization is not dependent on external causes and conditions, sometimes called self-realized. So here it's saying, that if we say that Buddhas have these three qualities, how can Buddhas not perpetually, so to say, have valid cognition? So now quoting a Tantra, since things are as the Tathagata Arhat Samyak Sambuddha proclaims them, and since they do not change into something else, his teaching is valid cognition of the world, including the gods, and therefore it is not deceptive. Moreover, the Three Skandaka Sutra says, Buddha, the Exalted One, the Gnosis, the Seer, the Arbiter, the means of valid cognition. This is actually a quote from the Sutra in Three Heaps, the 35 Buddha Confessions that we did for 15 days. There is a line like that. Yeah. This footnote here, I think Sobich made a misunderstood. He says, I could not locate this passage in the Three Skandaka Sutra. There is another text in the collection of sutras that has this title. But in the Tibetan tradition, when they call Pumpo Sumdo, they're talking about exactly the 35 Buddhas confession, which is embedded within this text that Sobish found called Upali Paripricha Sutra. I think Sobish misunderstood here that it is the Three Skandaka Sutra, which is the Pumpo Sumdo, but it's not the one that he's looking at. Anyway, doesn't matter. Then he quotes, Chodrak quotes Dijnana. Dhyana is one of these logic masters of India. So he says, so now he is, because this statement is stated for the benefit of those who study logic, but has gone too far in their logical analysis. So I think Chodra purposely quotes the master of logicians, Dhyana. It says, having paid respect to the Bhagavan, who is a means of valid cognition, the seeker of the people's well-being, the teacher and the Sugata and the protector. So he's saying, even the king of logicians, Dhyana, says the Buddha is valid cognition. So how can we say, how did we end up with this idea that Buddhas, only in the moment they achieved Buddha, it was valid cognition, then after that, gone, valid cognition. This is related again to the same kind of reasoning earlier, I think statement 1 in this chapter, where it says the Buddha wisdom is like water, confusion is like fire. Once you throw water onto the fire, you extinguish the fire, the water is also gone, finished. This is in the context of mind, psychology and the logic behind psychology. So the point that Kyoba Rinpoche is kind of disagreeing with is those who say, this valid cognition was only for that moment where from a 10th stage bodhisattva into the state of Buddha, in that split of a moment, valid cognition came in, completely cleared all the delusion, then from then on, no more valid cognition. Of course, these people are not saying that Buddhas don't have valid cognition in the same way that you and I don't have valid cognition. Yeah? They're just saying that, and these are again people who want to emphasize so strongly that the Buddha state cannot be understood by us. But the danger here is that some overextending of this leads to the implication that Buddhas don't have valid cognition, which Kyopa sees as important to say, no, you have gone too far. So Sobish Notes provides this. He says, according to Dorjish, okay, let's read the whole thing. This Vajra statement ties in with statements 16 and 17 in chapter 1, where the commentators discuss Jigten Sumgön's view of the role of valid knowledge. In general, he follows the teaching that mind has 2 aspects in which it is valid and 5 in which it is not. So we briefly looked at that already. Now, according to Dorje Sherab, some say that when the Buddha dwelt under the Bodhi tree, in the evening he actualized the 6 supernormal perceptions, at midnight the 4 truths of the Noble Ones, and in the morning he subdued the hordes of Mara. Now, then, in his first moment of omniscience, they claim, he actualized all the mandalas of knowledge objects. So quoting this, quote, from the moment of obtaining the gnosis of omniscience, the Buddha is endowed with all-pervading mandala of knowledge objects. So even these people who say Buddhas don't have valid cognition continuously, they do say that in that moment that Siddhartha became Buddha, he did achieve the state of omniscience. Up to that point, his mind was valid knowledge. But from the second moment on, it was not valid knowledge because it was the subsequent consciousness of removing misconceptions. Rinchen Chanchup states that this is the view of dialectics, meaning logicians. In contrast to such a view, Jigten Sumgön maintains that the Buddha dwells continuously in valid cognition. The commentators argue that the Buddha achieved omniscient gnosis endowed with the two knowledges and did not merely dwell in an equanimity that is indifferent due to a lack of analysis. Okay. If you go back up, it says up to that point, his mind was valid knowledge, meaning direct valid knowledge. But from that point on, in that second moment, it is not valid knowledge because, what is it? It is subsequent consciousness of removing misconceptions. What that is saying is this. In that first moment that Siddhartha became Buddha, that is valid cognition, valid knowledge. In the next moment, subsequent to that, what the type of mind that the Buddha had from that point on is the type of mind that is called subsequent consciousness. Now, this subsequent consciousness exists for the sake of removing misconceptions of those he teaches. In other words, that the Buddha have any mind at all, subsequent to that moment of it is entirely in response to the confusion of beings. Meaning, another way to state it, if the Buddha was in an empty room, if such a thing is possible, okay? If the Buddha is in an empty room, meaning a room where no other sentient being exists, then the Buddha mind is just empty. Nada, nothing going on. But if, Antonio walks in, or Antonio's dog walks in, immediately the Buddha will have this subsequent consciousness for removing misconceptions. So in relation to dog, Buddha will have a subsequent consciousness that can effectively help remove dogs' misconceptions. And then Antonio comes walking in looking for his dog, then the Buddha will have the subsequent consciousness that that has the capacity to remove Antonio's misconceptions, confusion. But left alone, Buddha's mind is empty. Nothing going on. Kyuba Rinpoche said no. He says, in fact, that moment where the Buddha perceives everything as it is, that moment continues. That Buddhas, by definition, is knower of the worlds at all times, with or without sentient beings being confused. Statement 5 actually elaborates on this, continues from this. But let's pause here. Questions, comments? Questions, comments? No? Antonio, your dog have any questions? Cecile, you should drive your car, okay? Don't pay too much attention to us. You're making me nervous. Your dedication is very encouraging, but you're making me nervous.
Everything is under control.
Oh, good, good. Everything is under control. Yes. Cecile is driving. Everything is under control. Yeah, for those of you who cannot see what's going on in the recording later, I'm watching Cecile driving as she's attending class. Yeah, so, okay, let's look at 7.5. The notes in 7.5 is very helpful, but let's look at 7.5. Statement 5. The result of separation possesses the mind of Gnosis. Okay, what is separation? This is technical term, meaning Buddhas have separated themselves from all confusion. So the result of having separated themselves from confusion is they possess the wisdom mind. This is a variation of a position that we have already seen. And so all these statements from 1 to 5, it's all on this topic of how Buddhas actually have wisdom mind. Independent of whether there are sentient beings confused or not, Buddhas have wisdom mind. Yeah. And this is in response to, again, a variation of the same kind of confusion that people have, which is people claim that once one has abandoned the veil of knowledge, objects within Buddhahood, mental engagement is interrupted. So more specifically, this point of view says that, which I already alluded to in the last statement, which is there are those who say, once Buddhas have become Buddhas, or once sentient beings have become Buddhas, they don't mentally engage in the world anymore. Finish, gone. Now there is a reason, again, why people say that. Because based on a certain understanding, to engage with the world is to necessarily be implicated by the unsatisfactory nature of the world, the suffering nature of the world. So therefore, if Buddhas are free from suffering, then by logic, by extension, they necessarily cannot have mental engagement with the world anymore. You see the way logic works? Yeah, it's very reasonable, I would say, from within logic, but it can lead to misconception that, oh, Buddhas are like stones, no more mentally engaged. And they used to have a mind, and now no more mind, and nothing else you can say about it. And again, why we say nothing else you can say about Buddhas, right? It's not out of nowhere. It's again out of reason. Like, because anything that we say about Buddhists is necessarily mistaken. Therefore, it is said that Buddhists have no mind. But what Kyoba wants to say is that, but when we say Buddhas have no mind, or Buddhas don't mentally engage the world, don't make the mistake of thinking that it's a state of blankness. It is not. And for sure, don't think that the goal of Buddhist practice is to become nothing. Or is to become like completely useless. This view of nirvana or the Buddhist goal, some people think that that is what it is. And, under certain like readings of like certain, like for example, Theravada description of the Buddha state, sometimes it sounds like that. Sometimes, not always. Sometimes it sounds like that. It's like, no, they're completely gone. Nothing you can say anymore. Finish. So I mentioned this many years ago. Pope John Paul II, he wrote this book called Crossing the Threshold, I think around year 2000. Yeah, like the threshold, the millennium. But he wrote this book, and in there he dedicated one chapter to Buddhism. First, he praised, the qualities of Buddhism, but in the end, he said, it's not, it's not good. I mean, he wrote this for Catholics, okay? So to be fair, right? Don't expect him to. He wrote it for Catholics, and he pointed out to his Catholics, those that he is pastor for, his flock, he says, because he says, in the end, Buddhism is not satisfactory, even though it has many admirable qualities. It's because in the end, they think that the goal is to become nothing. They say the state of Buddha is this state of blankness. And he says, no, God calls us into fullness, into... Yeah, I mean, based on that understanding, I would agree, it's not satisfactory, Instead, our God, he says, call us to a state of fullness, a state of completion that will come, when heaven and earth is restored, blah, blah, blah. And I would say, well, that is the Buddhist view. Call us into fullness. But certain readings of the Buddhist material can lead to the conclusion that the Buddha state is just a state of blankness. And then, of course, Buddha statues are so peaceful. Right? I mean, the general Buddha images are so quiet, serene, unmoving, that it does sometimes, you're like, wait, is that just a stone now? Right? They're so serene that nothing is going on. Of course, then you have Vajrayana Buddhas, then But generally, the image of Buddha is, completely poof. Recently, I was watching this series. I think I mentioned this series. It's about it's a Danish series about a Protestant clergy family, father-son drama. And in there, temporarily one of the sons got interested in Eastern religion because he went hiking in Nepal. So he came back like a a change man, you know, and he became like a new age guru, you know, talking about mindfulness and doing seminars and writing books and becoming famous, you know. And his father, the pastor, was very upset, you know. And then the father said to him, you know, what is this Buddhism thing? You know, Buddhists have no backbone, he says. Buddhists have no ambition, no backbone. He yells at his son, you know. But that is, I think, an accurate characterization based on the typical image of Buddhism as being so chilled out, so serene until like catatonic. Like, are you there? Hello? You know, they are so peaceful until they have pieced out, zoned out. Yeah. So in a way, you know, yeah, Kyoba Rinpoche in a way is saying, you have gone too far if you think all this language of negation, all this language of absence literally mean absence and nothingness. It says, no, no, no. It's not like that. Yeah. So here, the result of separation possesses the mind of Gnosis. It says, what happens at separation, when afflictive emotions are separated from you, what you gain is this mind of primordial wisdom. Since the Buddha, who has removed the defects and completed the qualities, this is the Tibetan word Sangye for Buddha. The Tibetan word for Buddha is Sangye. And Sangye, to Sang is to remove the defects, to Ge is to complete the qualities, Sangye. Since the Buddha, who has removed the defects and completed the qualities, has found the result of separation from what one must abandon, and the twofold gnosis of knowing phenomena as they are and in their various cases, he never deviates from this meditative equipoise and has no conceptions. All his activities of body, speech, and mind that are pervaded by the vivid knowledge of anything whatsoever are preceded and followed by this primordial wisdom, and he accomplishes them without obstruction. The mind that is the result of separation is established as the stainless mind, and its synonyms include names such as great being, Mahatma. Mahatma means great being. Mahatma Gandhi, the great being. Moreover, since it is without default thoughts, it is also labeled as no mind. So here, you know, is a good example. Kyoba Rinpoche said, when it says Buddha has no mind, it doesn't mean blank. It means no default thoughts, because mind, as you and I know it now, is this aspect of thoughts that is subject-object based. And therefore, delusions and ignorance is implicated, is involved. A mind like that possesses the result of separation. So Acharya Vira said, it is not possessing thoughts. That means it is not possessing thoughts, but it is vividly knowing anything whatsoever. It has the vivid quality of knowing, and not mistaken knowing, but knowing without obstruction, knowing without mistakes. But it doesn't have thoughts. As in, Buddha mind don't have thoughts the way you and I have thoughts. Quoting another sutra, Buddha, the Exalted One, is free from mind, mental faculty, and consciousness. Samadhi, however, is not forsaken. This meditative equipoise, this evenness of mind, of the knowing mind, that is not forsaken. But subject-object ways of thinking, chitta, mental faculty, manas, consciousness, vijnana, All those, yes, are gone. As the Heart Sutra says, no mind, no mental faculty, no consciousness. Yes. But it's not a nothingness. It's not a mere nothingness. Therefore, in the Buddha's mind, the perfect gnosis, there is no conceiving of this and here, and there is no consciousness that grasps that or there. So Lord Pamudrupa said, for the principal one among humans, there are no appearances. Yes, we still use language like that, no appearances, no mind, but it doesn't mean blank. Query. Is such sphere of omniscience not incompatible with the teacher who tames whoever needs taming? Reply, it is not incompatible. Maitreya Nata said, the reflection of Sugata suns appear immeasurably and simultaneously on the surface of all water receptacles that are all the pure disciples. So this question is a little kind of odd, but you know. Because the question is saying, you know, like when you say that this omniscience is empty, as in, and then how does the Buddha teach disciples? So the answer is like, oh, like a sun and its reflection in anything. Anyway, I think this question is a little kind of off. I mean, the point is not off, you know, but the placement of the question, I mean, who knows why it's there. Now, let's quickly look at the general view in the notes. Sobish provides from the Dorshema. The Dorshema provides some details of the general view that Kyopa is clarifying. At the end of the path, according to the general view, having finally completely abandoned the veil of knowledge, meaning, right, Buddha's abandoned two veils, two major veil, you know, coverings, confusion. One is the veil of self. So that is grasping on the self of persons. The second veil is grasping at the self of phenomena, and this is called the veil of knowledge. Yeah. So having finally completely abandoned the veil of knowledge, meaning now at the state of Buddha, the Bodhisattva breaks through to Buddhahood in a single moment. Concerning this, some prasangika madhyamaka, so this people who study madhyamaka, and specifically some who are prasangika madhyamaka, say that the meditative equipoise of the truth of Dharmata and the gnosis of the post-meditative state vastly expand from the first stage onward, meaning first bodhisattva stage, until at the end of the 10th stage, one actualizes the true state of the sphere of reality that is free from all extremes of proliferation. And then, they say, from that moment on, mental engagement is interrupted due to the complete absence of mental proliferation. So these will say, yes, from the first Bodhisattva Bhumi, all these like virtuous qualities increase. And why they need to increase, as in you grow them in order to clear out the trash. And finally, when you are at level 10, when you have cleared out all trash, all your brooms, all your vacuum cleaners, all that you can also throw away. That's the analogy. Then they say, now, unlike certain interpretations, so these are Mahayana philosophy people, right? Prasangika, Madhyamaka, they are Mahayana people. Mahayana people also talk about the compassion of Buddhas, right? So you might say, wait. So if all the qualities are thrown out, right, because there's no need anymore, right? After the 10th stage cleared everything, how are Buddhas useful? They have to answer that question, right? As Mahayana people. See, certain interpretations of Theravada with regards to the Buddha state, they don't need to explain the compassion aspect, because they say, no, Buddhas are beyond all of this. So they don't have to account for how can Buddhas be continued? How can because they don't talk about bodhicitta, right? They don't talk about aspiration bodhicitta. I will achieve Buddha for the sake of all beings. Right? In their system, it will say, at most, I will achieve the state of Buddha, period. Awake, gone. But in the Mahayana system, we say, I will achieve the state of Buddha for the benefit of beings. Now here, these Prasangika Madhyamaka, they at the beginning, they are similar to how some Theravada people think. The whole point is just to gather all these ways of clearing out. And once you have cleared out all the trash, now you don't need any broom, you don't need any vacuum cleaner, you don't need any mop, everything, all that can throw away now because all dirt has been cleared. Now, how they explain it is, it follows here. While being without mental engagement, their understanding of what a Buddha is, a Buddha's body, gnosis, and activities are then all the result of earlier gathering of the two accumulations, up to the ultimate moment of the 10th stage. They will appear in the minds of the fortunate trainees due to aspiration prayers and the power of compassion. But apart from that, at the time of Buddhahood, there is no intention that thinks, I must accomplish this and that benefit. Go down. All these results at the Buddha stage, according to this general view, are accomplished through the former bodhisattva's accumulations and aspirations, and through his compassion while on the bodhisattva stages. Now, that's a general view. And often I also explain it this way. But here a more subtle point that Kyopa wants to make will come soon. So according to this general view, when we say Buddhas have compassion, it's really we're talking about while on the bodhisattva stages, this compassion is generated. But at the Buddha stage, we cannot say that they have compassion. They only have compassion in relation to if, back to Antonio and his dog walking into the room where a Buddha is sitting. Then the compassion kicks into action. Again, left to the Buddha alone in a room, no dog and no Antonio, then also no wisdom and no compassion. According to this general view. Okay? If I understood the general view correctly, this is Sobish writing, the results accomplished by the Bodhisattva, that is, the appearance of a Buddha's form, bodies, qualities, and activities, require no mind at the time of the result. They appear as it is claimed to the trainee through the latter's own power, particularly through his devotion. Here, I think it's not what the main view is saying. Not just only through the disciples' own power that they perceive the Buddha's compassion. It is also the Buddha's pre-Buddha accumulated compassion that power exists. That power meeting the disciples' devotion, then something happens. Yeah. In other words, what we're seeing here is that these Prasangika Madhyamaka people, they want to again insulate the Buddha, or insulate Buddhists from being implicated with suffering. Because according to their logical way of thinking and reasoning, to even perceive suffering is to be involved with suffering. That's why they need to say, Buddhas don't have a perceiving mind, don't have mental engagement. That this is some kind of automatic compassion that is the result of the path. Yeah. One of the similes given is a precious jewel from which all that is necessary and desired will appear when one polishes it with prayers. If one does not pray, even if the jewel exists, nothing will appear. Thus, even though the Bodhisattva has previously accumulated the causes for the existence of such things as a Buddha's form bodies, at the time of the result itself, the resultant state requires no mind or mental functions on the Buddha's part. But the polishing has to occur on the disciple's part of that diamond. Here, this diamond is the Buddha. So in this system, I would say that it is somewhere in between certain Theravada interpretations that say Buddhas are gone. In fact, if you read some of these books by Theravada, they say, yeah, you go to a Buddha statue, everything, we do Buddha puja, all of that. It's not because the Buddha is in any way whatsoever actively responding to you. But you're just doing this to generate merit on your end. So in that system, Buddhas are completely no longer available, so to say. In this Prasangika Madhyamaka, he is available, but not really. Yeah, he is available, but not really. Or Buddhas are available. Buddhas are not just he. Buddhas are available, but not really. Kyopa's emphasis is Buddhas are available. Buddha's wisdom and compassion is what the whole point is about. That's why you achieve Buddha for the sake of all beings. But of course, he would also say, but Buddha's wisdom and compassion are available, not in the same way as, you are available. Now, Sobish's point notes, Jigten Sumgen refutes this particular point and specifies that the result of separation is the possession of the mind of Gnosis. According to Rinchen Changchup, Buddhahood of supreme awakening is achieved by the cultivation of the resolve for it, aspiration bodhicitta, through the training of the three vows, action bodhicitta, and by way of the antidote, the inconceivable virtue of abandoning that which one must abandon, which overcomes the net of veils. Such Buddhahood is characterized by mastery of the reality of all phenomena just as they are, free from the extremes of proliferation. One achieves the Gnosis that knows how things are, and one possesses the Gnosis that completely knows all things in their various cases and without mixing or confusing them. This is the Shibab of Statement 1, Chapter 1. This is what is called the result of separation, the completely pure mind of Gnosis. Through measureless qualities of separation, such as the 10 powers, the 4 kinds of fearlessness, and the 18 unique qualities, the Tathagata benefits all beings, which is called to possess the power of unimpeded Gnosis. The problem, as the Dorshema and the light of the sun, which is the commentary translated here, the problem, as the Dorshema identify it, is that such a result of separation or mind of Gnosis is sometimes labeled as no mind. Then people misunderstand and think no mind literally means Buddhas are gone. Buddhas have become stones and rocks. Dorje Sherab states that if one does not understand the qualities of the Tathagata as maintained above, and if one therefore differentiates sentient beings from the Buddha by saying that sentient beings have a mind and Buddha has no mind, one, quote, will not understand the section of the Dharma wheel of definitive meaning, unquote. Meaning you will only have the partial understanding of emptiness, and you don't have the full understanding that emptiness is also form. For the resultant state of Buddhahood, Jigten Sumgon does not maintain Gnosis as merely an absence of mind. Because since, according to Jigten Sumgon, it is the true reality that is forever changeless. So like, for example, in Gelugpa definitions, they say that the wisdom of Buddhas, sometimes you say Buddha nature, is a mere absence. They call it a non-affirming negation. It's a mere absence, meaning absence of confusion. Other than that, you cannot say anything else. They say to say more than that is to fall into the trap of dualistic differentiation. So here Kyöpa Rinpoche says, no, you have overextended this. Yes, it's empty of confusion, but it is not empty of Buddha qualities. This mind of Gnosis does not deviate from the state of great permanent meditative equipoise, and has entered meditative equipoise within the gates of limitless samadhis. Moreover, the result of separation arises spontaneously from these samadhis, according to the intention as the teacher to train any disciple who needs training. Now, in this context, the commentators quote the passage from the sutra, which says that Buddha is free from mind, mental faculty, and consciousness, but has not abandoned samadhi. Dorje Sherab explains this passage, saying that here to be without mind means to be without the basic consciousness. To be without mental faculty means to be without the mental faculty of affliction. And to be without consciousness means to have completely purified the sixfold consciousnesses. So, to say that Buddhas don't have consciousness doesn't mean they are unconscious. They don't have consciousness, meaning they don't have the afflictions associated with the sense consciousnesses that we have right now. Furthermore, Dorje Sherab also introduces a second aspect, namely that of the appearance aspect of the mind of Gnosis. So he quotes Manjushri Namasangiti. He is the appearance of Gnosis, the illuminator. In this context, Dorje Sherab differentiates between the mind of sentient beings, which is still obscured by veils, and the mind of Gnosis, which has completely abandoned the veils. For the first, The appearances of the mind arises as outer appearances. Whereas for the primordial wisdom mind, which the Buddhas have, appearance is the appearance of primordial wisdom. Now, regarding Pamodrupa's statement, for the principal one among humans, meaning Buddhas, there are no appearances. Doje Sherab explains that here no appearance is not the same thing as not seeing forms, because one's eyes are closed. Instead, the statement here implies the absence of external appearances, but not the absence of the appearance of Gnosis. Meaning Buddhas see. Of course they see. What they don't see is confusion. Meaning they do not see confused forms anymore. They do not hear confused sounds anymore. They do not taste confused tastes anymore. Yeah? They're free from the confusion of the sense consciousnesses. But they are not unconscious. They are not a blank. Okay. Don't get too confused, okay? Bottom line here is he's correcting, I would say, the excesses of certain ways of abhidharma and logic, following from this, therefore this, following from this. If this is true, this has to be true. If this is true, this has to be true. If this is true, this has to be true. That kind of, although generally Buddha taught us to have good, well reasoning, some of these reasonings can lead off to nihilism. Likewise, even if you're using this logic to the area of madhyamaka, of emptiness, again, yes, of course, Buddha taught about emptiness. But if you, again, following ordinary logic and reasoning, well, if this is empty, therefore this has to be empty. If this is empty, therefore this has to be empty. Then very soon you can veer off in nihilism. To me, I understand these statements to be warning about using our ordinary reasoning, which the Buddha values, but overusing it either in the analysis of the mechanics of confused mind and mind free from confusion, which the Abhidharma does very well, or in the Madhyamaka system of negating. You can also over-negate. In both cases, over-negating leads to nihilism, and Kyopa Rinpoche is warning against that. Questions? Otherwise, we meet tonight for those of you who are involved in the Drigong Dhammakirti. And this is Thursday morning for those of you in Asia. We'll meet then, starting at 7 New York time, 7 p.m. for us, 7 a.m. for people in Malaysia. Chanju Sem Rinpoche Ma Ge Ba Nam Ge Gyurche Ge Ba Nyam Ba Me Ba Yang Gong Ne Gong Du Be Wor Shu.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Gracias.